Hey, Taylor Elwood here, and today I thought I would do a follow-up video to my video about the multidiscipline versus, the singular focus and spiritual disciplines. And the reason I came up with this really is because of my wife. She said, it's a great video, but what about teaching people how to actually do this right? Because there's a lot of people who will take a multidisciplinary approach, but they'll do it the wrong way. And I thought that was an interesting comment on her part, so I thought about it. I'm like, well, what is the right way? And I began to think about it, and I thought, well, I'm going to create a video about this. So I want to share with you the right way to approaching it. And I think I'll start off first with what you shouldn't do. Really, what you shouldn't do is when you're learning multiple disciplines, whether they're a non-occult or magical, you don't want to cherry pick. And what I mean by that is you don't want to pick out what just seems appealing to you. You really want to learn the whole thing. So for example, when I'm learning a given discipline or practice, I really take my time and do my research. I'll read a variety of different books. I'll follow, different people who are practicing this thing. I'll study what I can, and I'll try the techniques out. And I'll do the stuff that I don't like doing as much as I'll do the stuff that I like doing. Not that there's really anything I don't like doing, but what I mean by that, I guess, is that I'll do the stuff that, at least at first, may seem like it's superfluous, and the reason why I'll do it is because it is there for a reason. And if I'm going to go and adapt it, I first have to understand it. So I think a lot of times, people will cherry pick stuff. Like they'll go, okay, well, I'm going to do this one thing out of all of this and forget all the rest. But you have to realize that that one thing is linked to all of those other things, and that there may be a reason why something was set up the way it was magically, or why, like in a non-occult discipline, you learn certain things the way that you do. I feel like you can't effectively integrate different disciplines of magic together, or non-occult disciplines with occult disciplines. You can't integrate them without understanding the original context. And so that research is really important, and that recognition that you can't cherry pick until you can't cherry pick. You need to know the system first before you can go and do something with it. For example, when I developed pop culture magic workings, those weren't developed without having first spent some time practicing magic and having learned certain things about the way magic works, and then reverse engineering them with what I wanted to do with pop culture magic. So I think that's a very key thing that a lot of people forget about with a multidisciplinary approach, is that they'll be like, oh, I just want to pick this one thing, or I'm going to read this book, but I'm only going to do this one thing out of this entire book. Well, then what are you doing? I mean, if you're going to learn a magical practice or a discipline, really learn it. Spend some time with it. If for example, you were to learn like Taoism, you're going to learn, the Taoist breathing methods. You're going to take the time to really learn those. And if you're going to learn moving meditation, you're going to learn how to do all of that. You're going to work with those stances. You're not just going to suddenly change it and be like, oh, I'm just going to pick that one little thing. Because if you do, there's going to be things you're missing out on. What I find with a multidisciplinary approach is that a lot of times what makes it effective is that you've taken the time to really learn something, and you begin to identify what's superfluous, what's optional, and that's when you can begin to take it and modify it and experiment with it and develop something with it that actually makes sense to you. So I think it's really important to keep that perspective in mind with your magical work, because a lot of times people will get really fixated on this idea of, I'm going to take this one little thing. I'm going to take this one little thing, and that's all I'm going to do. And that's not effective. That's not an effective approach to multidisciplinary magic. Or be like, I'll take this one thing and I'll smash it together with this other stuff. That's not very effective. Yeah, you might get some results, but it's not ideal, because you haven't taken the time to really research or develop what you're doing. And I think that's so important with what you're trying to do. Another example of this I can think of in terms of how you want to approach this the right way is that when you're looking at stuff, you don't want to just randomly put things together. Like Again, some people will take an eclectic approach to working with deities. They'll be like, oh, I'm going to work with Kali, and I'm going to work um, with the Morrigan, and I'm going to work with these other deities, and I'm just going to put them all together into this cobbled up pantheon. I, I personally don't think that works really well. Um, and some people would say, well, you work with different pantheons. Yes, I do, but I don't smash them all together. I work with them within a specific context that's relative to them. And if there is the rare occasion where I'm combining stuff, it's because I've done the research and I've done the work and I've seen that there's a connection there that can work. So I think that it's really important to not just throw stuff together, whether you're doing work with deity or you're doing work with magic. You really want to map it out. You want to develop an understanding of the system that is in place and why that system came into place. You want to do your research and then develop your workings. And then, as you've learned the workings and the magical practices, then you start experimenting. Then you start putting things together and you see if it fits and it works. And you keep a careful record of things. You don't just assume that you know it. You really take your time. You'll find that as you get better and better at this, that it actually becomes easier, because then you get to a certain point where you've learned enough that you can start to take things that you've learned about and start applying them to your magical work, because you have a better understanding of how to put it all together. I mean, that's really, when I look at my own approach to magical work, that's really kind of my big secret, I suppose. In that sense, is that I've learned I've really taken my time to learn and research and study. And then what I've done is I've taken it and I've modified it and improved upon it and changed it to fit what I'm trying to do. But if I hadn't taken that time to first learn it, I wouldn't have done it. It wouldn't have been successful. It's not just, oh, I'm going to throw it all together right out the gate. It's, no, I'm going to spend some time really learning this discipline, and I'm going to know that discipline, and then I'll see how it all fits together with other things that I've learned, and I'll see what I can do with it. So just something to keep in mind when you're doing your own magical work. If you're taking a multidisciplinary approach like I have, if you're a generalist, take your time and do the research, learn it, and then once you've really learned it, that's when you go and you take it back and you start applying it to everything else you know, and you see what you can do with it. Okay, so that's it, and I just wanted to share that with you. Thanks, and have a great evening.